Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 4 of Weekend Warriors, the review series for GranTurismo's selection of more traditional sports cars, but also vehicles which fall into a similar kind of category, such as sports coupes and also some modern muscle cars which kind of border on sports coupes more than they used to back in the day. And this particular pick is kind of one of those vehicles. It's almost a muscle car, even though it's not a muscle car. In effect, it's essentially Australia's muscle car, and there are kind of two versions of this vehicle featured on the game. You've got the Holden Monaro and the Pontiac GTO. Underneath, they are the exact same car. They just have a slightly different front end, and the Pontiac has a rear wing. The strange thing is, though, for some reason, and there really is no good reason that I can see, the Pontiac is allowed to have far more power than the Holden. And that really isn't fair, considering that they are the same vehicle. Now, the vehicle is a GM vehicle, as is fairly obvious, and it's powered by a Corvette spec 5.7 litre V8 engine. It's rear-wheel drive, and you can supercharge that engine in the case of this Pontiac up to a seriously impressive 912 horsepower, making it one of the most powerful cars in this series. Compare that to the Holden, which should be exactly the same, and that car puts out roughly 760 horsepower, for no good reason. Another strange thing is that even though the Holden has less power, for no good reason, it's just as quick, which is really strange. It's got the best part of 150 or more horsepower less, and less torque, and yet the top speed is roughly the same. That makes zero sense. And the Pontiac, I feel, and I may be wrong about this, but it's something which I've tried to explore more in the past, but due to time constraints of making all my tunes and videos, I haven't really had the time to push it as far as I'd like to. I feel that this car has more potential than I've currently unlocked. I can get this Pontiac to, like the Holden, cruise at around the high 250s, around 255, 257 under its own power, without NOS, without draft, on a flat road. This car has to be capable of more than that, because having that much more power and torque than the Holden should pretty much guarantee an extra 15 to 20 miles per hour at least. But for some reason, it doesn't. And there is a precedent, a very clear precedent set on GranTurismo for certain vehicles having extra performance capabilities based on unlocking certain gear ratios. Most notably the Plymouth Cuda 446 pack, which you can make incredibly quick, far quicker in fact than most of the other muscle cars, and also, among others, the Nismo 400R. Which seems, when you first tune it, to have a top speed of around 230, 240, but with the right turbo and gearbox combination, you can actually get that car to do around 260 under its own power. So there are certain vehicles which, if you mess around and tinker with them for long enough, you can actually unlock a huge amount of extra performance. And I feel like this Pontiac just is one of those vehicles. Now, I'm probably wrong, but I really hope that that's the case, because this car, quite frankly, deserves to be quicker than the Holden. Not because it's a better car, but because since they've allowed it to have more power for no apparent reason, you should at least be allowed to use that extra power. What's the point otherwise? Now, moving on from that contentious point which I have about the car, what is the kind of spec that you get? Is it a good car to buy? Should you get the Holden? Should you get the Pontiac? Does it really make a difference? Well, they're essentially the same car, as we said. This car does have the superior spec, 912 horsepower, 855 foot-pounds of torque. They weigh a similar amount, around the middle of 1300 kilo mark. This one weighs 1358. It puts out 672 horsepower per tonne in the case of the Pontiac, and the PP is perhaps a little bit too high for its own good, but not ridiculously so. 608 pp is a little high, to be honest, because you can get some decent race cars at that level, but it's not stupidly high. It's no Red Bull Junior, that's for sure. As far as when to use this car, as you'd expect, it is predominantly a straight line machine, especially for mid-range acceleration. So I'd recommend using this as kind of a performance sleeper car on tracks where you need to have a huge amount of power, and especially mid-range, but also to some degree top-end acceleration, such as the obvious choice of the Le Mans, which is my go-to example of that kind of track, but also stuff like Monza, Special Stage Route 7, tracks which require a little bit of handling, but a lot of straight-line performance. At the same time, though, they're not just about straight-line performance, you do need that little bit of handling. And that's the good thing about the Pontiac, and also by extension, the Holden Monaro. They have that strong straight-line performance, but they're actually surprisingly easy to drive as well. They're fun, they're quite forgiving, surprisingly so for a car with so much power, and although they can drift, and they make excellent drift cars, in fact in real life the Pontiac GTO of this shape is a very popular drift car, it doesn't drift in an uncontrolled way. You can get down to business when you need to and put in a decent lap time. Factor in on top of all that this car only costs just under 35 grand, and I would say the value on this thing is through the roof. Absolutely incredible performance value for money, and if you're feeling like a tuning challenge, I'd recommend buying this car and seeing what kind of speed you can get out of it, because as I said, I really feel like this car has more potential. At least 270 I would have thought under its own power. Not realistically, of course, but based on GranTurismo's physics. So, if you fancy a challenge, you could try and see if you could beat what I've done with this car. I'd certainly love to see someone beat what I've done, because it deserves to have more speed. But I'd definitely recommend checking this car out for a change. It has the straight line shove that you need for a ridiculously low price, and also surprisingly good handling for a car which arguably doesn't deserve to have any kind of good handling. So, overall, that's it for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.